Hello everyone, and welcome to this month's edition of our Best Practices webinar series. Today we will be learning about the threats from digital eye strain and the clinical and patient research that led to the development of the Biofinity Energys contact lens. Thank you to CooperVision for sponsoring today's webinar. This is Dave Trask of Optiport, and joining me on the call today is Angie Vera, Optiport's event coordinator. Thank you, Angie. During the webinar, your phones will be muted, so we couldn't hear any of your fun comments after that lovely exchange. So if you do have questions, please type them in the question area on the lower portion of the GoToWebinar informational box, which is located on the right-hand side of your screen. We will relay those questions to our speaker for her to answer, or we'll track down answers if we cannot answer them today. In addition, the webinar will be posted on the Optiport member website. You can access the member website by going to optiport.com and clicking on the member login in the upper right-hand corner. If you don't have a login, you can register, or if you need help with that, just let me know. We'd be happy to go through that with you. Digital eye strain is a hot topic nowadays and offers a great opportunity to have those conversations with your patients about their habits and ways you can help them. According to the Vision Council, on average, nearly 9 in 10 adults spend more than 2 hours each day using a digital device, easy for me to say, with 1 in 10 people spending at least 3/4 of their waking hours on a digital device. 65% of Americans report symptoms of digital eye strain, such as dry, irritated eyes, blurred vision, eye fatigue, neck and back pain, and headaches. So here today to talk with us about digital eye strain and a way to help our patients is Dr. Michelle Andrews. Dr. Andrews is CooperVision's Senior Director of North America Professional and Academic Affairs. She's recently returned from Washington, D.C., where she led discussions with legislators regarding the importance of patient safety and eye health. Dr. Andrews, welcome and thank you for speaking with us today, and we're going to pass control over to you, and the webinar is yours.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dave. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to speak with you today about this topic. We launched this product earlier this summer in conjunction with the AOA meeting, and I understand that many of you already have this product and are fitting it. So I'm very excited to tell you about how we got to this place and what went into the development and the genesis of this product, because it really is the first contact lens specifically designed to help people with digital eye fatigue. You know, one of the things that I think we are all familiar with as eye care providers is how much we are seeing digital eye fatigue and related symptoms in our professional publications. Not only in print are we seeing this, but certainly in our trade shows and the courses that are being offered, many of them lean into this concept of digital eye fatigue. What's new, however, is how much the consumer media has picked up this story and really amplified public awareness of digital eye fatigue. And one of the resources that I think you'll find very valuable is the work done by the Vision Council. They started in 2012 pulling together information about digital eye strain and digital eye fatigue. And that is a place, if you are looking for information or looking for resources, that you can certainly look to help you with information, either for yourself or for your patients. Dave, are you seeing that? I'm sorry, are you seeing that box on the screen? Can you see the entire slide?
Yeah, we got the entire slide in view, thanks.
Oh, okay, perfect, thank you. So digital eye fatigue is defined as the ocular discomfort that people feel after 2 or more hours in front of a digital screen. And as Dave mentioned in his introduction, 2 of the most common symptoms are tiredness and dryness, and you'll hear that a lot from your patients. But how prevalent is digital eye fatigue? How many people are potentially impacted? Well, more than 90% of adults use a digital device more than 2 hours a day. And I think if I were to ask all of you if you fit into this category, I would expect at least 90% of your hands to go up, if not more. More than 1/3 of millennials are spending 9 or more hours a day on a digital device. So this is certainly a population of people that are living their lives really simultaneously with their devices, and are spending a significant amount of their waking hours looking at screens. When we look at people who use more than one digital device at a time, so for those of you who are watching this on a screen right now and perhaps texting on your cell phone, you would fall into this category. 77% of people using more than one device at the same time report symptoms of eye fatigue. And so the potential is there for many of our patients to bring us concerns and have concerns about this. Yet, when we look at the statistics, patients aren't talking to their eye care providers about their digital device use. In fact, as many as 90% of patients aren't talking with you about how often they use devices. There's probably a number of reasons for this if we think about it. One is possibly that people just don't know. They just don't know to connect the way that they feel with their digital devices. People have very long days. Their devices have become just synonymous with life these days, and sometimes people just don't make that connection. Some patients might actually make the connection, but hesitate to bring it to your attention because they fear what you might say. They think perhaps you will tell them to stop using their devices. We know that's not a reasonable solution to this problem. They may also be afraid that we're going to tell them to stop wearing their contact lenses. That is also not an option that patients want to hear. Some of you may have seen signs like this in practitioner offices, whether it's eye care or health care. Maybe we are inadvertently discouraging the conversation about digital device use. And what if we replace those signs that say turn off your cell phone with a charging station? Imagine the kinds of conversations you could have in your office if you were not only initiating the conversation about digital devices, but really giving people the opportunity to initiate the conversation with you. The doctor that shared this with me, the practice that is using this charging station, he said it's really been interesting in how it has changed the way he practices. He said he used to be one of those doctors that was just frustrated with people text messaging in the chair, asking him questions while he was doing the exam. And he said it's fantastic now because people come in and they put their phones in the charger and he gets their undivided attention during the exam, and it certainly provides him with an easy opportunity to introduce the concept of digital eye fatigue and talk to his patients about their use. CooperVision went into designing this lens intentionally. We recognized the opportunity in the marketplace. Our own research told us that many customers were looking for some help with the tiredness and dryness that they felt on digital devices. And so I wanted to share with you just two studies that were part of our research and how we went about developing this lens, because I think it will help you understand why we did what we did and why we believe that this lens is a unique addition to the products currently in the marketplace. The first study dates back to 2003, and it was conducted by Jim Sheedy. And the title of the article is All Asthenopia the Same? And thinking back to 2003, and perhaps even today, this is what we call those symptoms. It's that general category of asthenopia, where we just can't make patients comfortable, but we also can't identify the key individual causes of it. And what Sheedy was interested in this study is whether or not patients could distinguish between the different symptoms that kind of go into that grouping of asthenopia, or that broad definition of asthenopia, and whether or not they could tell where within their eye they were feeling that symptom. So what his study involved was taking 20 subjects, and he asked them to perform 8 reading tests in a random order until the participants in the study described their level of discomfort as barely tolerable. So essentially, he's creating eye fatigue in a clinical environment. After they were all appropriately uncomfortable, he asked them the magnitude of their symptoms and if they could tell where in the eye they were feeling their symptoms. So this graph shows the results. And what you can see is that there are 2 very distinct clusters of symptoms. We have this one group up here, kind of up and to the left, and the symptoms that are in that cluster or grouping are headache, strain, ache, blur. You know, it would make sense as we look at this as eye care professionals that those symptoms would go together. And that it seems very common to us that they would go together. Not only were patients able to group these together, people who are not familiar with eye care, necessarily how the visual system works, but they were also able to rank those symptoms high on what's called the internal symptom factor scale, which is represented here on the y-axis. So patients were able to say that these symptoms go together and that they recognize them or feel them inside their eye, as represented by their high placement on the y-axis. Conversely, if we look at this group here down and to the right, we see another set of terms that, again, as eye care professionals, we would just intuitively group together. Irritation, tearing, dryness, burning, that all makes sense to us as belonging together, but perhaps not so intuitive to someone who is less familiar with the visual system. Also significant to Shady is that these symptoms were deemed to be high on the external symptom factor scale, which to these subjects in the study meant that they could identify these symptoms as originating on the outside of their eye. So what's the significance of this? It seems like a lot of intuitive information. Why is this important, and why was it important to CooperVision? Well, if we look at these grouping of symptoms up and to the left, we can readily see that the current spectacle solutions in the marketplace, the current spectacle options, are looking to address these symptoms. If we look to our contact lens vendors, many contact lens vendors are saying that their products help with these symptoms. What makes the Biofinity Energys product so unique and so different is that it really crosses over both groupings of symptoms and looks to address more than one root cause of digital eye fatigue. The second study that I want to share with you today really brings the contact lens patient into the conversation. This study was completed in 2015 and really sought to understand how frequently certain symptoms occur in contact lens wearers. And is that different from non-contact lens wearers? So this examiner gave over 500 subjects a definition of eye fatigue. And you can see that on your screen, very similar to the definition that I shared with you a little bit earlier. In this study, they said that eye fatigue was the physical discomfort of the eyes after spending periods of time throughout the day in front of a digital screen, like a computer or smartphone. And what those subjects were asked to do was, based on that definition, tell the examiner how often do they experience eye fatigue as defined above. Their options included anything from multiple times a day all the way down to never. I never experience eye fatigue. And here again, we have the results on a graph. So the first one I showed you, so I'm going to walk you through the graph very quickly first, just so you can get your bearings. The frequency of eye fatigue is reported here on the x-axis. All the way over on the left is greater than once a day, and all the way over on the right is never. On the y-axis is the percentage of patients who responded with that level of frequency. I mentioned that this study involved both contact lens wearers and non-contact lens wearers. So you will see the contact lens wearers information represented in these solid blue bars, and the non-contact lens wearers data is represented by the bars with the diagonal lines. So the first thing I'd like to point out to you is that if we were to draw a curve across this graph, a best fit curve across this entire graph would look something like this, if you can see my cursor tracing it. And what's unique about it is that if we were to draw a curve just connecting the contact lens wearers data, and if we would draw a separate curve connecting the non-contact lens wearers data, we would see that those curves would be virtually identical. They would almost perfectly overlap with each other. And what that tells us is that contact lenses themselves don't. It also tells us that the contact lenses that are currently in the marketplace are also not solving for it either. What is also interesting is the frequency of eye fatigue in the contact lens wearing population. As many as 74% of contact lens wearers are telling us that they experience eye fatigue at least once a week. And so as we look forward to coming up with solutions for these patients and things that will help them with these symptoms, it was important to us to acknowledge that contact lens wearers are also experiencing these symptoms and would most likely want a solution in a contact lens modality versus a spectacle-only modality. The other thing that this author was very interested in was, in addition to frequency, was severity. So which of these symptoms are the most troubling when they occur? And so in order to gather this information, what the examiner did was go through a literature search and identify the most common terms related to digital eye fatigue. I won't read these to you, they're in the blue box, but there are things that certainly we have discussed here on the call, but also symptoms that you are very familiar with in your own practices. He provided them with a rating scale for frequency and severity, and the scales for each were 0 through 4. Essentially, I never had a symptom to I always notice, or the severity of my symptoms is really nothing to very extreme. And as we look at the results, what we see here from these two graphs is that tiredness and dryness, again, showed up as the most frequent symptoms, but also the most bothersome symptoms. And once again, if we look at the contact lens wearers versus non-contact lens wearers, we see similarities in the curves. And so we knew from this information and this data, again, tiredness and dryness were the symptoms that we really wanted to go after, and we wanted to make sure that there was a contact lens modality for our contact lens patients who were describing symptoms very similar to spectacle wearers and didn't feel like they were getting the help they needed from their contact lens products. The other thing that I think is very interesting about this study is that very similar to the Sheedy study, where symptoms were able to be grouped into clusters or groupings, this author also found that symptoms were readily categorized by patients. In this case, the author called them primary global sensations and defined or included words like tiredness, headache, or strain in that grouping. That is very similar to the internal symptom factor that we saw with Sheedy's work. If we look at the secondary surface sensations in blue, the terms that correlate with that are burning, dryness, and irritation. Once again, very similar to Sheedy's work, showing external symptom factors of burning, irritation, and dryness. And then finally, visual sensations, which make sense, that have to do with refractive correction or potentially a lack of proper refractive correction. So again, even though these studies were separated by 12 or 13 years, and one involved contact lens wearers and the other didn't, we can see a lot of similarities in that patients can identify these symptoms, they can group them together appropriately, and they can identify where within their eye they are occurring. Further reinforcing that if we were going to bring a product to the marketplace that was going to be successful and really help patients, that we really need to make sure that we're addressing the tiredness and the dryness that people are describing with their digital device use. What's in the marketplace now? What options are available to you? I'm sure you're all familiar with these. We have a short list here of both behavioral options as well as product options. So if we look at the behavioral options that you have available to you, I'm sure many of you have offered your patients the 20-20-20 rule. Take a break every 20 minutes, look away at 20 feet for 20 seconds. Fantastic idea, probably not practical for the way people live their lives today and how busy they are. Of course, we can increase the size of our digital text. Certainly the technology allows for that. Some apps, that's more readily accomplished versus some others. We can certainly ask our patients to modify their distance from their workstations if that's possible, and certainly more frequent blinking and more complete blinks are important anytime people are looking at a near point target, but particularly with digital device use. Of course, there are products. There are filters that people can put on their screens. There are spectacle options that we've discussed. There are contact lens companies trying to help through material options. and certainly rewetting drops are all options for your patient. Overall, I think some of these are not practical. They're not something that patients find easy to maintain over the long term, and they only provide partial solutions. And in fact, when we did our research with customers, even though they were aware of these items and some of them were using them, they still felt like they didn't have what they needed to address the concerns and the symptoms they were having. So this is really where the Biofinity Energist contact lens came from. It is the Biofinity family of lenses, and so you're hopefully very familiar with the Biofinity material technology and how well that works for patients to have long-term comfort when they wear a contact lens. But we've taken that product that is already very successful in the marketplace and added digital zone optics to now give us a product that addresses both the tiredness and the dryness that people are describing on digital devices. Because the truth is that patients don't want their eye care practitioners to tell them to stop wearing contact lenses or to stop using their digital devices. They are really looking to us to help guide them to solutions that will enable them to be more comfortable and live the lives that they want to live. So I'm going to start with the optics of this lens because that's the unique innovation. As I've already mentioned, and you can see in the name, we've based this on the Biofinity platform, and so the uniqueness is in the optical design. So what we have done is we have added multiple aspheric curves across the optical zone on the front surface of the lens. These curves distribute power evenly, simulating more positive power in the center of the lens. This additional positive power eases accommodative burden, but does so without impacting distance vision. And it fits like a single vision lens. So imagine, if you will, aspheric curves across the entire optical zone that adds plus to the center of the lens, but doesn't impact distance vision. If your patients are wearing a Biofinity sphere in a -3, they would select a Biofinity Energist product also in a -3, and you can expect the over-refraction at distance to be plano. I'll show you a little bit more with pictures on how we put this lens together. Imagine, if you will, a spherical contact lens, and we all know how those are put together and what they're about. And we know that there's products in the marketplace, the Biofinity sphere lens, for example, that has aspheric optics already on the front surface. In the Biofinity Energist, we've added additional aspheric curves on the front surface of the lens so that the entire optical zone, that entire 8 millimeters on the front surface of the lens, has this digital zone optics applied across it. When we put this lens into test, and we offered it to people who are using devices at least 4 hours a day, at least 5 days a week, and who said, yes, I have symptoms that are consistent with digital eye fatigue. 8 out of 10 of those patients said that after wearing the Biofinity Energist lens, their eyes felt less tired. The Aquaform technology that is part of all the lenses in the Biofinity family, we feel very strongly is a great product and a great material to help with the dryness that's associated with digital eye fatigue. Our Aquaform technology is designed with a matrix of long chains, and we can effectively use less raw silicone in the lens because the construction of the lens allows for more water to bond inside the lens so that we don't have to have surface coatings or treatments on this lens. Because of the technology, we have a very comfortable product in that 9 out of 10 patients say that Biofinity Energist made their eyes feel good. So between the optics and the Aquaform technology and the construction of the lens, we are addressing the tiredness and the dryness that come with digital eye fatigue use. I'm sharing a parameter slide here with you. It looks almost identical to the parameter slides that you currently have in your office regarding the Biofinity sphere. The only difference is the addition of this aspheric digital zone optics lens design on the front surface. Who are these lenses for? Who should we be talking to about the Biofinity Energist lens? Well, anyone who uses a digital device more than 2 hours a day and who is a spherical patient is the ideal candidate for the Biofinity Energys lens. Now this breakdown of 2-week and 1-month wears and daily wears in the U.S. marketplace may not be an accurate representation of your individual practices, but across the U.S., 80% of the contact lens market is still wearing a 2-week or a monthly modality. And this lens really targets that patient population. I'm sure many of you share new technology in your practices with your 1-day wears, and I would not discourage you to stop that practice of telling all of your patients about new technology that's been made available to you. I think what you'll find is that your 1-day patients are not going to give up all the benefits of a 1-day lens for this technology. And so please share as you normally would or you choose to. But this lens was really targeted for the 2-week and monthly market, and we're finding that although people are interested in the technology across all modalities, it is the 2-week and monthly wearers who are most likely to adopt this lens and purchase these lenses. Of course, anyone who uses digital devices is an ideal candidate, whether they talk to you about it or not. And you can see the statistics here on the screen that we've talked about already, that this is a large proportion of patients in your practice. The key here is that they're not going to bring it up to you. And so if you're waiting for the ideal patient to walk in and walk through their symptoms of digital eye fatigue, you may never fit this lens. It's really important for you to reach out first, let them know that this technology is available, and ask them to try it, assuming their prescription fits within the sphere parameters available. So as we close, CooperVision went into the design of this lens very intentionally. We wanted to address the symptoms of tiredness and dryness that all of our research said were the 2 most frequent complaints that people have when using digital devices. Digital eye fatigue is common, but they are not likely to discuss it with you, so it will be incumbent upon you to bring it up first. Biofinity Energys lenses are the only contact lenses combining the natural wettability of aquaform technology with the optical innovation of digital zone optics to address the tiredness and dryness that people describe. And it does all of this without impacting distance vision. So patients can put their lenses on in the morning, live the life lead, and get the help that they're looking for when they are looking at digital devices or any screens throughout the day. So I know that many of you have the products already, but if you're wondering and you're sitting in front of a patient and you're thinking, is this the person that I would want to talk to about the Biofinity Energys lens, I encourage you to think about this picture. You can see that whatever these people are looking at absolutely has their attention. You see a lot of people smiling, but they're taking this in through their digital device. And this is a very common picture that we see everywhere almost anymore. So any one of these patients that is watching what's happening through their digital device is a potential candidate for this lens, except for maybe this woman in the front. So I am going to close here and certainly welcome to open the floor to questions.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Andrews. And again, there is the question box on that in the GoToWebinar box on the right-hand side of your screen. We can type some questions. A couple of questions that kind of came through. A couple of these have some themes. So, are there plans to use this technology in other modalities beyond just the monthly Biofinity?
Yeah, we have gotten that question quite a bit. There is a lot of interest in this technology on a 1-day lens, so we are certainly looking at that.
And kind of along the same vein, is it going to be available eventually in toric and multifocals as well as just the sphere?
So there are no plans for multifocal, but we are getting requests for toric as well. So I don't have any definitive plans on the toric, but multifocal is not on the table at all.
Okay. And as far as starting conversations, do you have any best practices or tips on ways practices can bring up these conversations with the patients? Yeah,
absolutely. I think there's a couple ways. There are a number of practitioners who like to bring up these conversations personally, And so they are engaging the patients in the lane, asking them about their digital device use, and asking them if they would like to try a new product that may help with that feeling at the end of the day of tiredness and dryness in contact lenses. We are also hearing that people are allowing or supporting and training their techs to bring this conversation up as part of the check-in or the pre-test process. You can certainly add questions about digital device use to any intake forms or any intake process that you currently use. I think that what's great about this digital eye fatigue is that because so many people use devices, what we're finding is that once people engage the conversation and just start the conversation, there tends to be a very high awareness from our patients and consumers that they just get this. There's an intuitiveness about digital eye fatigue, even though we may have never used those words, but they seem to grasp the concept right away. I think the other benefit to a product like this is because there's really no downside to your patients already in a 2-week and a monthly lens, because their distance vision remains crisp, there seems to be a willingness to try a product because there's no perceived downside. So what I would say is I wouldn't change whatever process you currently use, whether it's you as the eye care professional introducing the conversation in the lane or your staff introducing it prior to when the patient sees you, but just asking them about their digital device use and ask them if they want some help with those symptoms of tiredness and dryness that occur at the end of the day seems to be enough to get the conversation started.
All right, fantastic. Thank you for that information. Again, if you have any other questions, get them in the box as we are getting close to wrapping up here. So thanks again to CooperVision for sponsoring today's webinar, and of course, thanks very much to Dr. Andrews for leading our discussion today. We cannot put on these programs without the help of our vendor partners, so definitely appreciate CooperVision sponsoring our webinar today. And be sure to register for our next Best Practices webinar on December 8th at noon Central Time. We will be discussing photochromic lenses, best practices on maximizing sales and profitability, as well as growth strategies, and some blue light protection built into some of those as well. And also, it is never too early to prepare for Vision Expo East and our Spark Conference, which will be held on March 30th. More details to follow on this, but to make sure to mark it on your calendar now. So thanks again to CooperVision and to everyone who has attended today's webinar. We will see you in 3 weeks for photochromic discussion, and everybody have a fantastic Thanksgiving. We'll talk to you soon.